Welcome back, class. We're going to wrap this chapter up with this third segment, and we're going to talk about options for competing in international markets. And if you're an executive and you're trying to decide on how to enter a new country's markets, you must decide on some kind of an entry strategy. Do you turn over control of operations? How risky is the involved market or the involved move? Uh, do you share, profit is retained? I mean, how's that going to impact your financial structure? And so the authors and and the text give 5 options for entering a new country's market. And the first one is exporting. Go back to again to your econ classes. What's one of the components of, of aggregate demand? It's net exports. And when you're talking about exporting, you're talking about creating goods within a company's home country and then shipping them to another country where they're sold to customers by a local company. Many companies start out as exporters. Again, going to depend on, to a large part, on exchange rate, the strength of the home company's currency, the strength of the other companies or the other country's currency. That's going to impact the net, import export ratio. So when you're shipping it, the countries like to start out as an exporter. You export some things, you see what the demand is. Go back to some of the earlier discussions we've had about, demand and, what's the demand for that product going to be? It's an opportunity through the process of exporting to get out and play around with the market, to do some market research. You hear companies talk about doing R&D. It's probably a fairly inexpensive way to complete your market research by trying testing that market with a new product or a sample of your products, and you can see how it's going to be impacted by political climate, financial risk, social climate, because all countries vary and all countries are going to have a somewhat different taste for a given product. How cost methods, in exporting, you guys, a low cost method to determine demand or if the company's products are appealing to local customers. Again, you're testing the market. Through the export process, you're testing the market to see whether you want to expand your offering in a given country. Becomes unappealing once it's determined that the company's products are demanded in local market. And some of the issues with exporting, you lose control over goods once they're transferred to a local company for sale. Customer satisfaction and it could damage your brand depending on how this company that you're exporting the goods to treats their customers. Only makes money when sells goods to the local company. So that's the only way you're going to make money. If you have a product and let's say your product sells for $100 a unit, and you sell it, you export it for $100 a unit to a new company in another country. So you're exporting it, and for that $100 a unit, they turn around and sell it for $200 a unit. You've only going to make the potential for $100 a unit. You don't get any portion of that new sales price. The difference between your export price and new sales price, that goes to the company that you're exporting it to. So you do lose control and lose the opportunity to share in that reward when it's sold in the new company or the new country. Executives want their company to benefit from higher profits than local companies glean from the sales. So you've got a lot of financial issues floating around. You've got financial issues, you've got customer service issues, you've got potential brand issues. You don't want to sell your product to a company for resale, and that's what is happening. You're exporting it for sale to another company in another country, and you don't want them to disparage or damage the brand that you have worked years to try to build up. So first option is exporting. The second option is creating a wholly owned subsidiary. Wholly owned subsidiary, it's a business operation in a foreign country that a company fully owns. BMW and the Greenfield venture, a foreign operation that a company creates entirely by itself. And that's what BMW did. You not only develop it from scratch, or you can either buy an existing infrastructure. So if you're going to be wholly owned subsidiary, you either go in and buy an existing infrastructure and transform it into what you need, or you build it from scratch. The advantages to this is company maintains complete control over the operations, keeps all of the profits. Risky because the company pays all of the startup costs and the operational costs. So, you got advantages and disadvantages, just like you did with the exports, advantages and disadvantages. Political and economic environment may drive business decisions, both financial and operational business decisions. From a cost perspective, always remember when you're talking about, think about the profit function. Profit is equal to revenue minus cost. When you come to the cost component of that profit function, it's fixed cost plus variable cost. And so when you're talking about startup cost and operational cost, startup costs are going to be embedded in that fixed cost. Operational costs are going to be sitting over here on the variable cost side. And again, you want to be able to drive those long run average costs down and develop economies of scale. So unless a company sees that as an option, they may not want to go into a foreign country and develop a wholly owned subsidiary. Third option is franchising. Think about franchising. If you've ever been, to a foreign country, you'll see Subway, you'll see, UPS stores, you've got Hilton is big, franchising overseas, McDonald's. You see it a lot in service industries where they're franchising overseas. And franchising is when an organization called a franchisor grants the right to use its brand name, products, and processes to other organizations known as a franchisee in exchange for upfront payment, a franchise fee, and a percent of the franchisee's revenues, which is considered a royalty fee. Little financial investment by the franchisor. Minimal financial risk is appealing when entering risky countries. You're the franchisor, get your money up front for the fixed cost, the startup fee, franchise fee, and then the only risk you have at that point is the percent of the franchisee's revenue or the royalty fee. The downside, you enjoy only a small level of profits from the brand name. Local franchisees may act in ways that are not consistent with company policies. Local laws, regulations protect local businesses. They gave the example, and I've never been to the Pacific Rim, but they gave an example of KFC had issues in the Pacific Rim with the franchisees in the Asian market adding fish items to the KFC menu. So again, local governments, local economies, regulations, and laws protect the local businesses. Only successful at the franchisor has a simple and effective business model. And then they came up with, they talked just a few minutes in the text, and it's one that I hadn't thought about micro franchises, door-to-door selling, countries lacking infrastructure. You've also got nonprofits that are driving social benefits. So some of these things can impact the franchise, the franchisor or the franchisee, especially if a country is underdeveloped and lacks infrastructure and you're doing a lot of these door-to-door sales. The fourth approach is licensing. One organization grants another the right to create its product, often using patented technology and exchanges for a fee. And you see this more so, I think, in manufacturing companies or manufacturing industries. Uh, it avoids absorbing costs, but profits limited to the licensing fee. That's the only profit you're going to make. That's the only revenue you're going to make is from the licensing fee. You lose control over how the technology is used. Um, Japan in World War II, and they talk about Japan after the Korean War, especially when it talked about steel and some manufacturing issues. So um, you see it licensing, you see it probably more often than we realize. And again, a lot of it's in the manufacturing industry. And so we may not realize it's even there. It's a little different when you're talking about franchises. You can go to a foreign country and you see McDonald's, you see Subway, you see KFC. I have to admit that can't remember how long ago it's been, probably 15 years ago, and maybe 20 years ago in London. And London's probably a place I won't ever go back to. I enjoyed it one time, see Big Ben, Westminster Abbey, Library of London. There's a lot of neat things to see in London, but I thought the food was some of the worst I've ever had. To me, it had no style, no taste. Probably the best meals we had were, Indian restaurants located there in Soho. So I was certainly wouldn't go back to England for the food. Um, it got so bad that we probably ate multiple meals in Pizza Hut because it was one of the few places in London that they had a salad bar at that time. You could get salad, free refills on your drinks at Pizza Hut in London. And the pizza, you recognized it as this Pizza Hut, and Pizza Hut, it was okay. It was better than anything else we were getting in London. We tried a KFC one night, and we ended up picking it up, taking it back to room. Probably, you couldn't see what the food was going to look like coming out. And it came out like these carry out or takeaway packages. And you got it back and you opened it up and you would have never recognized it as KFC. The breading had some weird texture and it had an off flavor to it, and ended up pitching that one. But I don't know. That's an issue that you run into when you're licensing, or even an issue that you run into when you're franchising in certain countries. Again, the local laws and regulations protect those local businesses. Then you've got the fifth option is joint ventures and strategic alliances. And we've talked about this in multiple cases along the way. The previous four options, company maintains strong control over operations. If it's talking about wholly owned, company turns over control of the operation to a local company. You're talking about exports, you're talking about franchises, you're talking about licensing. In a joint venture, two or more companies each contribute toward the creation of a new entity. Again, a joint venture. You see this in the automobile industry with joint ventures. Strategic alliance, companies work together but don't create a new entity. If you're on you're on the Bourbon Trail in Kentucky, and you will see both joint ventures and strategic alliances among the bourbon producers. Probably not as much as you see it in Napa and Sonoma Valley in California in the wine industry, where you see a lot of joint ventures and you see a lot of strategic alliances, especially with you sparkling wine and in the California market. You can't call it champagne. Champagne can only be assigned to a sparkling wine that's produced in the Champagne region in France. So you have a lot of these champagneries in France. Take one that we visit every time we go to Napa Valley, but it's Domaine Carneros, and it's their quote joint venture, and in Northern California where they're producing wine. And you see some of the the Bordeaux producers that have come over and are working in the, the red wine varieties in Northern California, Napa Valley too. So you see that a lot in kind of the wine industry, the bourbon industry, where they're bringing together either in a joint venture or a strategic alliance, and it's going to depend on whether a new entity is created or a new entity is not created. So that's going to be the differentiating. In either case, whether it's a joint venture or strategic alliance, the companies share decision-making authority. They control of operation. They share any profits, that are generated from the strategic alliance of the joint venture. It provides local knowledge regarding market conditions, facilitate product acceptance, and appease local governments. They had an interesting example in the text, and it was talking about KFC, and it was KFC. I want to say a local realty group in China. There's like KFC and 2 or 3 other companies in China that went together, and they attributed that to what made KFC so successful when they went to China. And with that, I think we're going to kind of wrap things up here on chapter 7. Again, chapter 7, it's one of my, I don't want to say favorite chapters in this text, but it's one that I think is going to be more and more important as we move out over the time horizon, and the global economy continues to be more integrated, and there's going to be a lot more opportunities for individuals that want to work for companies, either want to get into the international market as entrepreneurs or want to work for companies that already have a foothold in the international market. So hope you've enjoyed chapter 7 as much as I have. And when we come back, I think we're going to get into corporate level strategies when we jump into chapter 8. So the next time we get together, we're going to be talking about chapter 8. Talk to you soon.